Should there be a by-election when an MP vacates a seat? The question dominated a 4-hour debate in Parliament today. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to In Parliament. When MP Dr. Ong Chit Chung died suddenly last July, the 5-member Jurong GRC was left with 4 members to meet the needs of constituents there. That sparked off a public debate on whether there should be a by-election for the group representation constituency. The government said no. But nominated MPs Professor Teo Lian and Dr. Loo Choon Yong felt otherwise. And today they moved a motion for the government to amend the Parliamentary Elections Act to provide for mandatory by-elections. Aside from the rights of voters to be represented by the MP they had voted for, they argued that when a minority race MP vacates his seat, minority representation would also be affected. Professor Teo says holding by-elections would keep the dynamics of democracy at a high level, even as she raised scenarios whereby the ruling party could lose a by-election.
As by-elections differ from general elections in having little influence on general governance, voters may feel freer to vote against the ruling government and to give the incumbent a bloody nose for whatever political reasons. However, a bloody nose is not a broken back. If the government lost a by-election today, its formal status would not be affected.
Highlighting the experiences of various democracies from the Bahamas to Africa to the United Kingdom, Professor Teo argued that holding by-elections when a seat falls vacant should be legislated and not left to the discretion of the ruling party. The law, she says, should tame power. On a lighter note, she also gave the House the analogy of a concert to illustrate why she feels a GRC team should have the full number of MPs it was meant to have.
If you went to see a Beatles concert, it might be bearable if Ringo was missing from the lineup, but would it be the Beatles if John or Paul were absent? One of my favorite rock groups is the Bangles, the female version of the Beatles. I caught their reunion concert down under, but only 3 of the original 4 Bangles were playing. 3 out of 4 were good, but 4 out of 4 would have been excellent.
Speaking on the parliamentary motion, he and Professor Teo had jointly moved. Dr. Loo Choon Yong argued it's best to change the laws in favour of by-elections involving minority MPs now, when there is no urgency. This is because discussions on such a sensitive issue can be calm and rational.
The very foundation of the GRC system is severely shaken. The raison d'etre of the GRC, that of ensuring minority representation in Parliament, is nullified when a minority member of Parliament vacates the seat. A distinction has to be made between an MP being an advocate for his constituents when it comes to municipal issues, such as appeal on HDB housing matters, assisting to get jobs, etc., as opposed to the MP being the constituents' representative in this House, to debate policies, to pass necessary laws, and to supply money appropriately for the government to function. So I strongly believe that these representational responsibilities cannot be delegated.
Supporting the motion, nominated MP Siu Kam Hong argued a by-election should be called whenever an MP vacates a seat and not just when a vacancy is left by a minority member in a GRC or when half or more of the elected members in a GRC vacate their seats. His point, once the composition of the elected team in a GRC changes, it has become a different team from the one elected. So a fresh mandate from the voters is necessary. This is why he argued that a by-election should be called in Jurong GRC following Dr. Ong Chit Chung's death. To support his argument, he cited a street poll by the website The Online Citizen, where 478 Singaporeans were asked if there should be a by-election in Jurong GRC. 60.1% said yes, while 39.9% disagreed. When the poll was narrowed down to 312 residents from Jurong GRC itself, 56.8% were in favour of a by-election.
This was a street poll, it was anonymous, it was random, and it does not purport to be statistically valid or representative of Singaporeans or of any group. But I think the results are nevertheless very interesting and very instructive. Putting aside all those respondents who did not have an opinion, and I must say that this was a disturbingly high number, the majority of Singaporeans and the majority of Jurong GRC residents felt that a by-election should be held. To me, This motion is fundamentally about setting in place the right principles for calling by-elections when there are vacancies in the GRC. We should set the policy now so that we have a consistent approach to such situations moving forward. When the day comes, we will know what to do, and nothing is left to discretion or to chance.
Speaking against the motion, Jurong GRC MP Halimah Yaakob said since Dr. Ong's death, the remaining 4 MPs in the GRC have kept their promise to serve all residents wholeheartedly, even though it has meant taking on heavier responsibilities. Madam Halimah also rejected the argument for a by-election when a minority candidate vacates his seat in a GRC.
Professor Teo's proposal would mean that minority candidates would wield considerable power and has great sway over the fate of the GRC. If for whatever reason the minority candidate resigns, then all the other MPs in the GRC would have to resign too. This would put the minority candidate in exactly the same position that the 1988 amendment wanted to avoid, that is, allowing one MP to hold the entire team to ransom. This is clearly not the intent or purpose of the GRC concept, and is counterproductive for minority candidates, as there would be a lot of resentment at giving them so much power to undermine the whole GRC.
And also against the motion, MP Hari Kumar, saying the electoral style here has to be one which fits the unique characteristics of Singapore. The lawyer MP says having more elections doesn't mean a country has a better form of democracy. And if voters are unhappy, he says there are checks in place for the ruling party who will face the music at the next general election.
It is therefore only sensible that we keep things flexible. Let the Prime Minister be the Prime Minister. Let him do his job and make the decisions. We are not dealing with the Beatles or the Bangles. We are not even dealing with earth, wind and fire.
Rising to give the government stand on the motion, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong stressed that Singapore deliberately adopted an election system which chose political parties and not candidates to form the government. Giving a historical perspective on the issue, he says the government learnt from experience of the tumultuous years before independence. Then there was instability in the Legislative Assembly when breakaway MPs formed an opposition party and called for a no-confidence vote against the government after the House was split. After separation, then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew moved for the amendment of the Constitution such that if any MP resigns or is expelled from his party, he has to recontest his seat, and by-elections need not be held within a fixed time.
The result, the party that wins a majority at the general election has the mandate to govern for the full term. And the result, MPs cannot force by-elections at random, mid-term, distracting the country from other more pressing concerns. Therefore, we have stability. The public and the media are deprived of drama and suspense because stable government doesn't make for exciting news. But Singaporeans are better off without the excitement of these heart-stopping events. This is a system which serves Singapore well, whichever party is in government.
Recent examples were brought up too. India recently held a crucial vote of confidence on the Congress government over India's nuclear deal with the US. Although the Congress party eventually won the vote, there was widespread perception that some MPs' votes had to be bought either by policy compromises or outright cash payment. Mr. Lee says this could happen because MPs can change sides freely and parties cannot control their MPs. And in Malaysia, MPs can change party without resigning, and if they resign, they can force by-elections within 3 months. This was why Anwar Ibrahim could persuade MPs to cross over from the ruling party to his opposition alliance.
I'm not passing any judgment on the merits of the political contenders or positions. I'm not suggesting that our system of government and parliamentary democracy would be better for Malaysia. So I'm not commenting on the merits of their position, but I'm saying for Singapore, there's no doubt that our system has served us well. It's delivered a strong, effective government, one that focuses on delivering results for our people and achieving the best for our country.
The Prime Minister says even if all 6 members in a GRC resign, it's no different from 6 different single-seat constituencies becoming vacant. The government will continue unless the vacancies result in it losing the confidence of the House. And even if minority MPs in GRCs